Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. A couple of days ago, I talked about Rachel Gilmore, the disgraced former global news journalist, making an absolute fool of herself in front of a parliamentary committee studying disinformation. The story somehow has developed further since then, with Rachel Gilmore not being able to hold herself back from responding to her critics. And I think we need to talk about it a little bit more because Gilmore, despite in a certain sense being a completely irrelevant figure, I think she is very relevant in that she represents the id of the left. This is somebody who the legacy media and many left institutions consider a credible human being. An MP, either a liberal or an NDP MP, would have had to call this woman in front of the committee to talk about disinformation when she has no clue what she's talking about. She's extremely arrogant and snarky. She's far left. In fact, she's actually okay with the murder of that healthcare CEO in the US. She's basically our discount version of Taylor Lorenz, that disgraced former Washington Post journalist who likes to smear people and dox people. Rachel Gilmore similarly likes to smear people and dox people. They are one of a kind and they almost look exactly the same. But let's get into a little bit of this. I'm going to show you her testimony from the other day if you didn't see it before. When I did talk about her, it was in a live stream many of you didn't see, or it was late into a video. It was like at the 20-minute mark I started talking about it. So let's at least see how she presented herself and let you decide whether or not this is embarrassing or not.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me. This is obviously a very important topic and I have some big feelings about it. So to kick things off, I'm sure you all remember the Freedom Convoy, yeah? Well, as part of my coverage at the time, I joined several Telegram channels and groups where organizers and supporters gathered to exchange everything from planning details to fringe conspiracy theories. And you might not have realized this, but it was actually just days after the convoy. Actually, you guys probably do know this. Just days after the convoy that Russia invaded Ukraine. So
Yeah, so apparently, in Rachel Gilmore's framing, the Russian government decided that it was at the right time to invade Ukraine because of the Freedom Convoy, or there's some connection there that she's trying to vaguely draw. But Rachel Gilmore is somebody who doesn't understand the relationship between cause and effect. So I think I've let that play enough. She just goes down a rabbit hole talking about how, there's Russian disinformation out there. And is there Russian disinformation out there? Sure, there is. But the liberals and Gilmore wanted to kind of be assumed that Russian disinformation is like really serious. It's like hurting our institutions, and people don't like the liberal government because of Russian disinformation. It has nothing to do with the fact their policies suck. There's just so much vague disinformation out there that that's the real reason why Canadians don't trust their government, because of the Russians, not because of the Canadian government's behavior. But even just at the start of that, she's saying, I have some big feelings about this topic. It's like, it was bad. And I'm not like grabbing the worst clip of this. This is her opening statement that she uploaded herself. This was what she decided to post. This was her own X account where she posted this opening statement. I think she only got to speak for about like 4.5 minutes. There was some sort of emergency at Parliament, or fake emergency, so everyone had to leave the room. Maybe someone pulled the fire alarm because they had to listen to Rachel Gilmore. But here is her response to the many, many, many people who have been mocking her performance, because she does not just reserve the weird Valley Girl type behavior for the start of her testimony. That was throughout the entire 4.5 minute clip that I have seen, where she just talks as if she's sitting down for mimosas with her friends. It's horrible. But here she is saying to her critics, a lot of very serious people are calling me unserious because I have a personality. So allow me to share a few things. Okay, apparently a personality means being insufferable. If you guys are not insufferable, that apparently you do not have a real personality, according to Rachel Gilmore. She says, I consulted a national security expert on my testimony before finalizing it. How liberal was that national security expert? A widely respected disinformation expert has praised this testimony. Yeah, it's probably because they agree with your worldview. There are a lot of people in academia who are class A morons. I have a master's degree in public policy. There are so many people who research public policy who just have no clue what they're talking about. I had a professor who has seriously issued a study on whether or not tires and brake systems emit enough emissions that they require regulation or taxation. Yes, that is something that somebody actually researched. They never researched whether we should get rid of a tax or anything like that. They only ever research if we should tax people harder or regulate harder. But Rachel Gilmore, we don't need to, it says continue at the bottom, but it really doesn't continue into anything. She shows that she had sources for what the claims that she made. I'm like, of course, yeah, everyone knows that Russia invaded Ukraine. You don't need a source for that. It's the ridiculous leaps of logic you take from these fact patterns. The fact that she then goes on to act as if like tons of problems in Canada are just because of Russian disinformation. She connects dots that are just not there. She also was like notoriously bad and at getting things wrong when it came to the Freedom Convoy. She pushed the arson conspiracy that a bunch of truckers who were wearing had purple hair and whatnot and puffy like luxury brand jackets were trying to burn down apartment buildings, which was obviously untrue, and it was a bunch of lefty people trying to plant some stuff. But I want to just quickly jump over to the video that she ended up making on this whole issue. That's part 2. Let's go through each of these parts because I think it's very telling about the behavior, again, of people that are valued by the media. She likely right now works as a cutout for the Canada Anti-Hate Network. And that, again, is an organization that the mainstream media takes seriously, despite being an obvious far left smear machine.
Russia identifies the areas where we're most prone to polarization.
Yep, that's me, testifying before a parliamentary committee on Russian interference and disinformation. You might be wondering how I got here.
Nepotism.
So let me take you behind the scenes. It all started with an email from the committee in mid-October asking me if I could appear, but I was in Washington that week, so I couldn't make it then. Luckily, this time, I could. Now, when you speak at these things, you usually want to give an opening statement. So you have to prepare that in advance so you can give it to them and they can give it to the translators who do live interpretation in people's ears. So I spent my weekend drafting, researching, and fact checking. It was pretty easy to break.
You had to research the fact that the Russians invaded Ukraine like a few days after, and you somehow thought that was like a good thing to present.
Brainstorm what I wanted to say, but I also wanted to make sure I had receipts for everything that I ended up saying if I was asked for them. You can see them all at the bottom of my Google Doc. I also ended up on the phone with a national security expert who is also a friend, and I read her the broad strokes of what I planned to say. When she confirmed that it was all accurate, I felt—
What was accurate? What? The weird insinuations about Russia invading Ukraine because of the Freedom Convoy, or the other like attacks that she ends up making on Canadians in general having basically turned on the liberals because they, I guess, believe Russian disinformation or something like that. She talked in very vague terms that was basically just meant to sprinkle in the idea that there is a boogeyman out there that is causing bad things to happen and that we need to combat it.
Felt ready. On the day of, I went through security, went up to the committee room, and waited outside. They had a massive coat room that was perfect for fit checks, and this is the bag that I brought, which is from a local Palestinian bookstore. The committee was—
Oh yeah, by the way, she like really, really hates Israel in like a psychotic kind of a way, like her friend Erica Iffel, who I have dubbed in the past Black Hitler. If you want to look up Erica Iffel, she has an extremely strange hatred for white people that's like overt. And at one point, she attacked a brown lady as being fair-skinned because if you dare disagree with Erica Iffel, you become white in some way. It's insane.
was running behind dealing with something in camera, which means it's close to the public, but I was cool lingering outside because I had crashed at my mom's place, so I made her come with me, and she was calming me down because I was very nervous. While waiting, I looked at social media and I saw that one griftery dude was already planning to live react on a stream to—
I don't even agree with Viva Fry all the time, but what does a griftery dude mean? You're a grifter because you disagree with Rachel Gilmore, apparently.
Through my words. That was a trip. Then I got called in, took my seat, said hi to the MPs, and it was time to start. You can head to my last video to see what I actually said. It was interesting to watch the MPs and see who was like sitting scrolling on their phone and who was super engaged and listening to the opening statements, not just from me, but from everyone. The third speaker was the guy behind the Vatnik Soup series, which exposes Russian disinfo actors. But just a few minutes into his opening remarks, an alarm started going off. We all just kind of waited for it to end, and people cracked some jokes that maybe it was Russia.
It was some probably brave hero who didn't want to listen to this stupid committee meeting.
Then we were told we actually had to evacuate. And I overheard one staffer mention that a suspicious package may have been found. So we all went outside, and one dude I asked said he heard the suspicious package thing had actually already been resolved. So my mom and I went and got lunch. So that was that, or at least I thought. Because apparently seeing a young woman being unabashedly herself triggers a lot of the men on the internet. Naturally,
Oh yes, it's men who hate her. It's just men out there. It's just all these disgusting, disgusting men who don't like Rachel Gilmore because she obviously doesn't know what she's talking about. She, in fact, I don't know, maybe she has a problem with women, but she ended up doxing one of my friends on X, Bratney, and basically helped amplify doxed information from Bratney in order to try and get her fired from her job. A single Indigenous mother was doxed by Rachel Gilmore, and when she was called out for it by Bratney herself, Rachel Gilmore then very snarkily reshared the information and said, "Oh, you mean this?" Antifa people were actively calling her place of work, harassing them, trying to get this woman fired from her job, and Rachel Gilmore could only giggle about it. Oh, isn't that quite funny? And this was for the crime of this woman in a private Facebook group, which was under a profile of her real name. In a private group, was just saying that people should go on X, where her profile is anonymous, and just criticize the things that Rachel Gilmore was saying about James Topp, the veteran who walked across Canada to oppose mandates and lockdowns on all that stuff. So that was considered very, very bad by Rachel Gilmore and her allies. So they then decided to target this woman for destruction. I have an entire article I wrote about this. If you type down Rachel Gilmore, the National Telegraph, it's all there. And Gilmore is so either gormlessly stupid or such a bad actor that she said, well, it's not doxing because some of the information is public. Just because you can find information on the internet publicly does not mean that it isn't doxing to take that information and shine a giant spotlight at it. Technically, all information is somewhere in the public. If you found somebody's information in the phone book back in the day and you just published it on the internet, just happened to want to target this person for, to get them to lose their job or for people to show up and egg their house or whatever. But what's public, it's not like I'm doing anything wrong. You can find that information online. You can find anything online. But if you take somebody who is acting in a private Facebook group talking about how people and explicitly should respectfully disagree with you and point out how you're smearing James Topp, and this was shortly before Rachel Gilmore got fired after my article was released. Hopefully I had something to do with that because she is a bad actor. But because she was going to respectfully disagree with her, Rachel Gilmore says this is harassment and decided to help Antifa people counter-harass Bratney. And this is obviously in retaliation. This is something that Rachel Gilmore is personally interested in happening. And these people are probably targeting her in some way because of the influence of Rachel Gilmore, or else why would these accounts for some reason go out of their way to target someone for criticism of Gilmore? But let's go back to Gilmore talking about stuff. I just wanted to give that story out to explain also why I have a personal animus against people like Rachel Gilmore, especially when she pretends that it's men who dislike her. Does Rachel Gilmore hate women? Does she hate Indigenous single mothers? What's wrong with her?
Pale Mail, Toronto Sun, and National Post columnists started having an absolute mentee bee that
And then she goes to part 2 here.
Mentee bee that I know what I'm doing enough to speak at a committee. Sorry.
So everyone was having a mental breakdown because Rachel Gilmore was able to put one foot in front of the other and actually string words together. The words were embarrassing. I got some big feelings about this. You guys probably know about that already. Gag me with a spoon. What was her performance? It wasn't good.
You're not sorry. The haters actually got so out of control that one of them dressed up as me and filmed herself going, totally, for her sake,
Yeah, it's a good impression. And I guess Cat Canada herself is a misogynist. She hates women. Cat Canada famously hates women.
really hope she got picked. Anyways, all of that was pretty much limited to the app that shall not be named, because everywhere else, people were being super nice and supportive. And the Butnick Soup guy even told me he loved my speech, so that felt amazing. Then I got home and saw that I hit 100K followers on TikTok.
Oh my goodness, validation, guys. Validation. She got 100,000 followers. Also, TikTok followers are not worth that much because there's such a great amount of view inflation on TikTok that having like 100,000 followers would be like the equivalent of having like 10,000 followers on X, because there's just so many people who click and scroll on TikTok all day long. They'll watch like 100 videos a day, that you having like a view count of like 10,000, 20,000, like Rachel Gilmore does, is not much of anything. For a video to be viral on TikTok, it has to have like 500,000 to 1,000,000 actual plays, and Rachel Gilmore has never even approached that. A lot of her videos have like 8,000 views.
So that was kind of the cherry on top of a very cool day. Overall, it was a really neat experience, and I hope my testimony helped someone who heard it. And to anyone out
Helped who? How would any of that help anybody?
there who has ever been told they need to dull their sparkle to be taken seriously, don't ever let boring, constipated dudes convince you that's the case. Because
I'm gonna give you guys a piece of wide advice. Don't do anything that she did there. If I go in front of a committee meeting, I will be, myself, but I will be a much more professional version of myself. I'm not gonna do like the Wyatt Claypool show in front of a committee if I am ever called to testify for something. Don't lose your sparkle, guys. Lose your sparkle a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, because if you go in front of a committee meeting, this brain dead, talking to them like you're their 15-year-old friends and you guys are going to Starbucks between classes in high school, you will be mocked. There were so many people mocking her. Yes, oh my goodness, the person on the panel with her was nice enough to say, I liked your testimony. What was he going to say? I hate your testimony? Nobody was going to say that. Did he present like you? Did he watch you present like that? And he says, I'm gonna throw my script out. I gotta go for it. I gotta start talking like that. I gotta talk in the words of the people. Anyways, well, I want to move on to another thing. We're going to move on. This is where I'm going to be oddly appreciative of Mr. Frank Dominic here, because we're going to end off with a Frank Dominic video. He is going to be the coffee beans for us today that allow us to get the smell of the Rachel Gilmore videos out of our minds. And so I just wanted to talk about this video because I think it, at least in my mind, proves a lot of left-wing TikTok people, they'll just say anything, in the sense that his analysis here is so bad, I just need to talk about it. Because, it just demonstrates that I think there are so many people online, especially on the left, who don't understand why the right is growing in popularity, while they have a complete misunderstanding of how people actually think. And they'll just make stuff up in order to support their perspective. But here we go.
Young Canadians aren't really concerned with Trump the way that many other Canadians are, with only 11% of young Canadians being concerned about Trump and his administration, with that being up to 26% with the 60-plus club. And part of the reason for that is that young people have a lot of other things that they're concerned about, like, the economy, immigration, and being able to afford a house.
Okay, one thing, everyone cares about those issues. Those are top issues for every single age bracket. But he's very much cherry picking information as he goes here to suit this narrative he's trying to develop.
Meanwhile, older people have a history with seeing what happens when we have a bad US president and the impact that can have on the Canadian economy. So this isn't an issue of what is actually truly important to people on an internal level, but more so young people thinking about what they need now and older people seeing what has happened in the past and what can come from this.
Okay, so this is why I want to talk about. He has this weird idea that old people have this inherent wisdom that they see a U.S. administration, the damage it could do to Canada. No, there's a lot of you out there who are above the age of 65 watching this video right now who don't care that Donald Trump is the president, and only 26% of people who were 65 plus in this poll said they were concerned. Yes, that is a big gap compared to younger people, but do you know why that gap exists? Because people who are above the age of 65, although conservatives are currently winning every single age bracket with wide margins, but people above the age of 65, especially in Eastern Canada, are disproportionately liberal. They also disproportionately watch the legacy media, who breathlessly covers Donald Trump with massive negativity. So why do you think that older people who are probably pensioners at this point and not working anymore might have a stronger might care more about Donald Trump and the U.S. administration when they're polled? Why do you think young people why do you think they are disproportionately not caring about healthcare? I think that healthcare only polled like 30% in terms of how much young people care about it, but for people above the age of 65, and so young people's 18 to 29, and above the age of 65, healthcare polls at like 65, 69% in terms of an important issue. Obviously, that's how that works. If you're young and you don't use medical services a lot and you're not concerned about your health. Older people are, obviously. And so, but Frank, his analysis is like young people don't care about the US administration because they got bigger things on their mind. They have the economy, they have immigration, which was also much higher for older people as well, which doesn't make any sense. And he says, and they only have time to care about these things. Well, why are younger Canadians actually were disproportionately concerned about freedom issues, Russia-China interference? Actually, it was a different one, not that one. That was actually older people that were more concerned about that. But they were more concerned about Indigenous reconciliation, and there was a couple other niche issues. Yes, older people are also more concerned about the climate, but that's because there are rich, liberal pensioners who have the luxury of caring about abstract, vague issues like climate change. That's why that happens. And so this isn't like Frank's not a villain or anything here. If anything, he's a hero because we don't have to think about Rachel Gilmore in the back nine of this video. But I find there's so many left-wing TikTokers who don't get any traction once they move to YouTube because their analysis only passes the smell test if you're frankly a very liberal young person on TikTok who's barely paying attention to these minute-long videos.
But why is immigration so important? And it's 31% for people who are older and 36% for people who are younger. But why is it such a hot-button issue for so many people? First off, it's an easy scapegoat. It's very easy to blame the lack of jobs and the lack of housing on immigrants.
No, no one's blaming it on specific immigrants, but immigration is a problem. And this is such a stupid left-wing talking point. A problem exists. Talking about that problem is scapegoating the problem on what? Well, let's have hopefully Frank actually addresses it.
Also seen the governments abuse the LMIA system as well as international students in the job market, which has, especially for young people, had a tangible impact on the availability of jobs as well as the suppression of wages.
Wait. So is Frank blaming immigrants now? Is he scapegoating immigrants? I like how in one moment, because it's conservative to care about immigration, he has to say people are scapegoating it. And then in the next sentence, he then talks about how, immigration's a problem, way too many temporary foreign workers, way too many foreign students taking up spaces in colleges. There's the unemployment rate's high, all that stuff.
While a lot of people are against immigration because they're racist, I don't think this is mainly because of racism.
How many people are actually against immigration for racism? How many? I know genuine racists in Canada. I call them out. I don't like people associating with them because I don't like racism. At the same time, so is there what percentage would Frank Dominic blame racism on people caring about immigration? 5%? 10%? Because he seems to have it as a very forward focus in his mind when he talks about immigration, that there's a bunch of racism out there. It kind of just demonstrates, you can almost see his mind laid bare. Immigration comes up. We're talking about people from other countries who are not white. Now he has to talk about racism. Why? It's an irrelevant factor. No, but what significant racist group of people is out there who are pushing against immigration because they're racist? No, people don't like the fact there's way too many people entering the country too fast. We don't have the housing, we don't have the jobs. And a lot of people are showing up here who don't care about Canada. They don't care about the history. They don't care about Western values or anything. That's a problem. Also has nothing to do with race. You get to have people move from countries that are very white, and they will not have Canadian values if they do not have Western values in that home country. Syrians tend to be pretty white overall. Syrians also, look at Bashar al-Assad. Is Bashar al-Assad a big pillar of Western virtue? I don't think so. But anyways, that's it for us today, guys. Hopefully this video didn't go on too long, but I always like to talk about left-wing content creators because I find them fascinating. It gives you a good insight into who your opponents are in politics and honestly how bad their arguments are, how warped their perspectives are, and how little they understand the average Canadian. Here's one person, Steve Boots, I'm just going to quickly mention. I was looking at his YouTube channel. I'm just fascinated by his new social media career because he stopped being a teacher in Saskatchewan recently, and he's doing YouTube like he used to do TikTok, because all these guys used to be on TikTok, and TikTok you can just spam out videos all day long, because I would just say TikTok's a spam site. The amount, if 100,000 views on TikTok is nothing, because everyone who uses TikTok will watch 150 videos in a day, which means there is massive view subsidization of individual videos. Look at him now spamming out videos on YouTube. It's a bit small on screen, but like these videos have 149 views, 375, 65, 305, 144, 120. Like, I almost want to come beside Stevens, like, don't make videos this way. It's stupid. But the thing is that they don't know what the average Canadian wants, so I think he's just throwing spaghetti at the wall at this point. Anyways, so that's it for me today, guys. Remember, subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment, do all that great stuff. And you can always support the channel financially if you want to support our legal fund. My legal bills have gone up to $34,000 over the past few years. So anything you can donate to that does take the burden of cost off me. And so I guess that's it for me today, guys. Have a good one.